The alarm bells are deafening, and the evidence is irrefutable. Greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuel burning and deforestation are choking our planet and putting billions of people at immediate risk. We are on a fast track to climate disaster. This is not fiction or exaggeration. It is what science tells us will result from our current energy policies. This is a climate emergency. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. It is day 3 of the conference in Sharm el-Sheikh, and it's election day in the U.S. We thought we'd try to slide this show in at 6 o'clock before the polls close and everybody gets glued to their TVs to watch what might happen tonight. Elections have consequences. We just saw Lula elected in Brazil, which is good news for the environment. We saw Sunak Rishi, now the Prime Minister of the UK. We don't know how that's going to turn out. Benjamin Netanyahu looks like he's going to be the next premier of Israel. That's not good for the environment. So we're all on tenterhooks. I hope it goes well, and I hope that the climate change can remain at the forefront, or at least we can keep working away at this problem after tonight's election. Let's see how it goes. So with these programs, we are trying to convey information on breaking news, trying to get behind the scenes, provide you with as much information about what's going on at COP as possible. But we also want to give you kind of an overview and a basic understanding of climate change issues. So last night, we discussed loss and damage. John Capece got into a little bit of a discussion on loss and damage and what the implications of that. I just want to review some real basics, and please forgive me if you know this inside out. I don't want to bore you to death, but I want to talk about mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation is basically our attempt, our need to draw CO2 and methane out of the atmosphere, to stop greenhouse gas emissions and to pull CO2 out of our waters. I mean, that's a huge Herculean lift, because we're still pouring tons of fossil fuel emissions and the greenhouse gases into our atmosphere. We need to curb that. In fact, we need to reduce carbon emissions by 50% by the year 2030 in order to have a chance of limiting ourselves to 1.5 degrees Celsius, which was part of the Paris Accord, and that was the target that we're all aiming toward. We're not doing well on that. We're currently at 1.1 or 1.2, and it looks as though we'll hit 3 by the middle of the century if we don't have a serious mid-course correction. So mitigation is basically our attempt to reduce carbon emissions by having more energy neutral energy sources, and by going to renewable energies, reducing our consumption of energy because we need to be more efficient with that. And some of us may be hard decisions. We may not be able to have 2 cars. We may not be able to have a pool or a 45,000 square foot house. We need to reduce. It's going to take a paradigm shift on the part of everybody to kind of recalibrate how we live and how we adapt. It's going to be a sea change for everybody. So that is mitigation. Mitigation is not only reducing our carbon emissions, but our attempt to maybe draw CO2 and methane out of the atmosphere. That will take energy. There's some interesting new technologies coming down the pike to actually draw CO2 out of the atmosphere. So that is all part of mitigation. So that is all curing the root of the problem. And then there's adaptation. So adaptation is our need and our ability to gird ourselves for what's coming. We have some serious climate change challenges already heading our way, and we're already experiencing them. So what do we need to do? We need to provide hurricane relief. We need to provide sea level rise solutions. We need to protect the people who are suffering harm. So that can mean strengthening our infrastructure. That can mean raising our roads. That can mean raising our houses. That can mean withdrawing from coastal communities and paying people to move. That can mean reinforcing our infrastructure and our hospitals and our fire departments. It can mean compensating people. So in all kinds of ways, we're going to have to adapt what is inevitably coming and what we already see. So that's adaptation. And in many ways, those two streams compete with each other for money. So you have one stream of money going toward reducing the problem, the root cause, and we have another stream of money going to try to protect humanity from the worst consequences of what we're already seeing. My inclination is always to treat the problem at the source. We're water quality people, and we know with blue-green algae, it's better to try to reduce the blue-green algae coming into the water. As our friend Chauncey Goss said, it's better to not put the sugar in the coffee than to try to get it out once it's in the coffee. So treating the problem at the root remain our first priority. But it's going to be inevitable that we need to protect our citizenry in all over the world, and people who are less advantaged than we, from the consequences of climate change. That is adaptation. So those two streams are kind of interesting, a little bit competitive. I will always prone for the mitigation side, reducing carbon emissions, trying to solve the problem, because if we don't, the adaptation costs grow exponentially. The adaptation costs will go from $70 billion, which is what we expect will be the cost of the hurricane we just suffered in Southwest Florida. It'll balloon exponentially if we don't start reining these problems in right away. So that's a little bit of a primer on mitigation and adaptation. So what happened today? A guideline was issued by the Secretary General that will provide metrics to evaluate genuine net zero solutions. So what does that mean? We're all, as we say, we're entering into a paradigm shift. And the private sector, and we need the private sector to be involved, the private sector will rush into this space. Even the fossil fuel companies are all repainting themselves as renewable energy providers, often falsely, just as the cigarette companies might have claimed that they are actually providing a service to humanity. When they were in private, they knew they were creating incredible harm to the people who were their clients. So similarly, the fossil fuel industry has been a little bit duplicitous. So if you look at our TV ads today, every energy company, every fossil fuel company, every gas and oil company will portray themselves as being energy friendly and renewable energy friendly. So in order to avoid that kind of greenwashing, the Secretary General today started to put out a guideline to evaluate and create some metrics for actually assessing net zero components and carbon neutral components of our plans, so that people can't just claim, like, the food industry is famous for this. They'll say all natural when the ingredients are far from that. So we have to be very vigilant. This is part of the responsible actions, and we who have a megaphone have to keep pushing this message out and making sure that in our rush to a renewable energy economy, we're responsible and we hold people accountable. The Waterkeepers are very good at holding people accountable. We're famous for that. And it's our pride. And we have a role to play. So we will help. But this announcement today should be helpful in holding companies accountable. And I'm not saying it's always willful malfeasance. It may just be ignorance. They may be overstating their case, and so I don't want to paint too hostile a brush. But this guide and these metrics are absolutely essential. So this is the statement that the Secretary General put out today on net zero commitments and greenwashing. I'm just going to read a couple of excerpts on it. A growing number of governments and non-state actors are pledging to be carbon free. And obviously that's good news. The problem is that the criteria and benchmarks for these net zero commitments have varying levels of rigor and loopholes wide enough to drive a diesel truck through. We must have zero tolerance for net zero greenwashing. Today's expert group is a how-to guide to ensure credible, accountable net zero pledges. It provides clarity in four key areas: environmental integrity, credibility, accountability, and the role of governments. So there's a brief outline. We'll post the entire statement to our Facebook page, and we thank you for reading it in full. Thank you. So John and I had a little discussion today about greenwashing, and this is an issue that John feels strongly about. So let's show that conversation about greenwashing. Thanks. Hey, John, welcome to tonight's show. Let's get into this issue of greenwashing, which I know is an issue that is near and dear to your heart. As we all rail about these companies, multinationals that now convert themselves into green corporations, and it's really largely sometimes a charade. So the Secretary General came out with a statement on this today and trying to apply some metrics so that people just can't wildly claim they're green. They actually have to abide by certain metrics. So what are your thoughts on this issue, John?
Well, as an engineer, that's sort of exactly what I focus on, whether I'm dealing with it as a waterkeeper, doing the accounting for, say, nitrogen and phosphorus in our waterways, how much is in the soil, how much gets into the water, how much is used as fertilizer, or if we're looking at energy, how much energy is embodied in a product or service. And these are both areas within which I've done considerable work. And it's the computational, the quantitative aspect of this overall effort, the real nuts and bolts of bean counting or watt counting, if you will, or CO2 counting. So what I tend to do is emphasize this in the educational setting as well as within our advocacy programs within Waterkeepers. And I'll share some slides that I have on this topic with you that discusses some of the aspects of accounting or when accounting is misused, it's in effect greenwashing. And greenwashing can be due to ignorance, or it can be intentional in a shrewd sort of way. And I suppose it can also be intentionally ignorant. But people can make mistakes with their carbon dioxide, their carbon accounting, or they can intentionally be deceptive in an effort to gain some sort of advantage one way or another, typically economic or from a public relations point of view. So it's essential that we have good accounting methods and that a lot of people understand how it's done so they can evaluate it properly, either in the public setting or in the technical setting. So carbon accounting, when it's done properly, feeds into an area of economics we call ecological economics, which instead of maximizing dollar returns, you're attempting to achieve some sort of maximal outcomes relative to humans, relative to the environment, relative to a set of objectives. And why do we need this carbon or energy accounting? Well, we have to educate the public on the greenhouse gas implications of our activities. We have to make proper choices. We can't make proper choices unless we know that one thing is better than another, and one thing is worse than another alternative. And we have to develop well-targeted policies and subsidy programs to help have the government push the economy in more productive, more useful, more balanced directions. And of course, to avoid what we've discussed here today, the greenwashing. And when we go to invest in new technologies, we have to understand the carbon counting aspects of it. And the example I've been using is one of solar energy. Now, we all think of solar energy as a net benefit for the environment, relative to reducing greenhouse gases. But that's not actually true yet. In fact, all of the solar energy that we've deployed globally has made the problem worse in the short term, because the initial energy that goes into producing all the hardware necessary for solar photovoltaics is very energy intensive. So up front, you're creating an awful lot of greenhouse gases through the manufacture of this infrastructure and its deployment. But over time, by driving down the technology, driving down the energy that goes into producing the photovoltaic modules, the solar panels, by improving the technology year after year, so it takes less and less energy and materials to make these solar panels, we gradually achieve a carbon negative effect. Plus, over time, we're exponentially increasing our capacity to produce these solar panels and deploy them for our use. So while it steadily ramps up the carbon implications, the deployment of solar, at a certain point, it quickly noses down and just plummets into a carbon negative situation. So knowing when this is going to happen is very important, because not only do we need to know what solar is doing for us and when, it's important to understand that every single technology that we deploy to address the climate crisis is going to follow a somewhat similar curve, where it takes decades to achieve beneficial outcomes. So full accounting is necessary to track and avoid greenwashing, and new technologies can take decades to deliver benefits, but exponential growth through deployment and improvement of our technologies can really benefit us over time. Now, to assess these things, to determine how much energy it takes to do this or how much energy is involved in that, there are a variety of methods, and they can be quite complex. And the two that I've worked with the most are called life cycle assessment, and the other one is energy analysis. Now, life cycle assessment is it's complicated. It's not only do you have to look at every single aspect of a production system, you're having things in different units. It's apples and oranges and peaches and grapes. And at the end of the day, you don't just have one number you can compare to another. You've got a whole matrix of outcomes that you have to compare. So even utilizing the life cycle assessment can be quite complex, but it gives you more detailed information. Now, the other method I've worked with is simpler in that it has only basically one number, but then a few variations on it. Life cycle assessment has several metrics, including climate change, the CO2 implications, water depletion, eutrophication, of course, that we deal with as waterkeepers all the time, land use implications, acidification, ozone, toxicity, etc. Now, this matrix of measures each have different units, so it gets very complicated very quickly. And the one we're most concerned about is global warming potential, and it's measured over 100 years, and it's kilograms of CO2 equivalents. Now, energy analysis has a single number called a transformity, and then it has other metrics based upon those transformities, things like energy yield ratio, the environmental loading ratio, the renewability percentage, and the energy sustainability index. And we can use those to kind of compare within the single number how much energy may be in it, but that's not always the only information we need, because much of the energy that's in the objects we see around us are passive. In other words, we had nothing to do with it. It had to do with the Earth's plate tectonics and solar energy creating the fossil fuels and things of that sort. So we care about certain aspects of these numbers, and we have to use these ratios to get a handle on that. And these transformities start with a single unit of like sunlight or joules, and that's basically one. So 1 joule of energy coming from the sun. But then you look at rainfall, and it's 2 to the 10 to the 4th power is embodied in rainfall relative to solar energy. Then you go down to diesel, and it's 8 e to the 4th, 10 to the 4th solar joules. And then you can go all the way up into human labor, which is roughly 5, 10 to the 5th. And The most energy intensive objects are culture and knowledge, information, things that we learn and develop as humans and we capture in books and other archiving systems. So everything has these energy units. Now, when we go to analyze it, it's like a bowl of spaghetti, all of these diagrams of lines going from one meatball to another. You have a square here, which represents your system. It could be a factory, it could be a human being, it could be any object. And then you have inputs to it and outputs out of it, and inefficiency associated with all those transformations. So this is a very interesting way of analyzing and trying to parse out what's really going on within these systems. And then, as I mentioned, human labor is a very important unit because it's what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. Now, when we go to use this, by each person having appreciation for this, what's called systems ecology or ecological economics, people are in a better position to make rational choices of how they're going to live their lives, how we're going to structure the economy. Now, within Kissimmee Waterkeeper and within the other organization, Campus Climate Corps, that I work with the students, we're focused on trying to promote these methods so that people utilize these techniques to avoid greenwashing, to make good choices, to strip away our old subsidies and implement new, wiser subsidies that are appropriate to today's priorities. And we believe that all universities should have programs in ecological economics so that all students have appreciation for this. And then some of the more advanced universities that have been doing this for a longer period of time, they need to lead with the research and development on improving these methods and coming up with the numbers associated with every object so that people can make wise choices. Now, when we come here to these UN climate conferences, we're also very cognizant of the energy implications of what we're doing. We don't want to greenwash our own activities. So we've made an effort to account for the carbon implications of our own presence here, getting here, and undertaking these broadcasts. And we found that interacting with people through these virtual technologies, in effect, saves 95% of the carbon. So whereas we have, say, 4 or 5 people here on the ground producing these broadcasts, if we leverage that into reaching, say, 20 times as many people back in the United States, we in effect achieve a positive outcome relative to sending people everywhere across the ocean. So that's sort of a summary of the sort of the technical aspects of defining what is greenwashing and what is not.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I helped put us on the negative side of the equation by not attending this year. I have to appear from here in Southwest Florida. It was not my intention, but I'm glad I'm contributing to our marginally toward our net zero goal. That's amazingly interesting, John, and it's so complicated. It's a real matrix as to how you evaluate all of these different characteristics that go into whether people are in fact reducing their emissions and reducing carbon, or it's just a charade, as you say, either by malfeasance or by their inability to calculate it correctly. So this was the theme of today's conference. A couple of other announcements, and as we progress, as we hurtle toward a new economy, a renewable economy, we really have to implement guardrails so that we're being responsible and we're being accurate in our accounting, so that people just can't claim to be energy responsible when they are not. So that's why the work you're doing is so critical, and why we want to bring attention to that issue. So any last thoughts before we adjourn on this particular issue, John?
Well, I'm just hoping that I can be more efficient in my operations here and make my time more productive. The ordeal of getting here run me a little bit ragged and come down with something a little
saw
cold.
You sniffling. Yeah, be
Yes,
careful.
yes.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I think I'll be ready to go tomorrow.
yeah, great. So that's great. We will reconvene on. We'll choose another topic for tomorrow's discussion. Thank you so much, John, for weighing in. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Casey. Bye.
So there you go. There's a very complex. John is a deep thinker, and he likes to examine these issues and turn them inside out and really study them very thoroughly. So thank you, John, for that intervention. Really appreciate that. Let's go to Michal Fidler's commentary from today's COP, because I know thanks to Florida Weekly, he has press credentials, which gets him into all of the conferences and all the press events and all the announcements. So he was there this morning. Let's look a little bit of Michal's video recap from today. Thanks.
Here I am to provide an overview of my today's adventure at COP27. So, like usually, I started my trip to COP on a bus, and noticed that there were these limos going by, having a national flag. So here would be an EU flag on one of the limos on the Mercedes. So I knew that it will be a busy day, since the high level segment is taking place today. But before getting in there, I was greeted by this group of activists, and it was the first demonstration I have seen at this COP. It felt kind of like a joke, because it was probably 8 people just saying the same slogans over and over, which was basically eat vegan, make peace, save animals, save the planet. That was the only demonstration I have seen at COP, and it might as well be just the only one that we will see here. Well, let's see how this develops. As soon as I went through this pseudo demonstration, I got to one of the main signs welcoming the participants to COP, and of course that's a photo opportunity. So people were taking selfies and had their photos taken over and over. I could just flip through these images and keep going. Then I saw that the private jets were coming to town. So again, as a sign that the big guns, the big politicians are in town. And if they don't come on the private jets, they come in these nice limos. So here would be somebody from Sweden who just got there in a nice BMW. And people were coming out of these limos. I did not really know who is this guy. I couldn't read it from the badge. Oh, then this limo came, and I thought, hey, it might be Arnold Schwarzenegger, because that's the car he drives. So I waited, and this lady came out. So I was kind of disappointed it was not Arnold Schwarzenegger, but it is what it is. Then I went to the media center, because there where I get oriented, and saw that in the amphitheater, or in the plenary room, one was happening. One of the session, which would be the heads of states and government delivering their opening national statements. I saw that these news and press people were getting really busy. So for a while I was watching it on a TV. And then decided that I need to get in. Took the photo, this one, which later on proved to be very, very important. And I headed towards the plenary one. Here I met, this is a Prime Minister of Tunisia, so I knew that I'm on my way. But as soon as I got to plenary one, I realized, hey, it will not be so easy to get in, because it was quite crowded, and I did not really have the great accreditation for that. But as Dr. John Capece says, I use these special tricks to get in and get out. So eventually I got in. I was promised to have 5 minutes, so just took this photo and then slowly crawled forward to get a better shot. And eventually I end up there where I really wanted to be. And instead of spending there 5 minutes, at the end I spent there 5 hours. But a little later to that. People like to measure, or men like to measure their masculinity by comparing the sizes of their various organs. The photographers compare themselves by the size of their lenses. Unfortunately, this is not my set of lenses. I had the smallest lenses there, but it is how it is. Eventually, I started to take photos of all the heads of states and presidents and prime ministers and so on. And soon I lost a track who was who. So I can tell this is the prime minister of Bulgaria, here being simultaneously translated, and here would be, I am sorry, I can't even remember who is this guy, but just know I mean, this is head of state of another African state. I just can't remember where he was from. But note the red number in the right corner, because every participant had only 3 or 4 minutes for delivering their speech. Not everybody was following the rule. I think the winner of extending the time was the Prime Minister of Venezuela. Well, this is not him, but he went 13 minutes over his time. This would be the President of Austria. This would be the main stage where the politicians were delivering their speeches. So it would be a close-up on yet another president. I believe this was Rwanda. This would be another Prime Minister. I think this is Cyprus. Another prime minister, I believe this was Somalia, and so on. So we always, as photographers, got a chance to just get close to the floor and had a minute or two take our photos. So we went there, took the photos and ran away. Then we went directly to our computers and tables and worked on getting the photos processed. Finally, there was a break because the program was just getting very late, so we had about 30 minutes break, and the security suddenly wasn't so tight at all. We got a chance to get to the podium, or not me, I didn't really want to go there, but the delegates went there and were taking photos on the stage, right there on the podium, pretending that they are the main speakers. So this gentleman from Somalia asked me to take photos of his photo. Here would be just another example of what I wanted to show. Then the break was over, and the big guns were coming back again. So here would be in the middle, that's Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, discussing stuff with Charles Michel, the guy on the right, President of the European Council. And although during the first part we were not allowed to get any closer, suddenly nobody cared, so I just got to Ursula von der Leyen. I was 2 meters from her and was allowed to take photos like this. Then the president of that session came, and other people showed up on the podium, so the speeches started again. So here would be a close-up of Charles Michel, again President of the European Council, delivering his speech, and just from a different angle, and Ursula von der Leyen delivering her 5-minute speech. Topic-wise, it was really just mitigation, adaptation, finance, and collaboration in all colors and all flavors. Sentences like "crisis is here, we must act, action now, together we can do that," and it was just over and over. Each head of state had a chance to deliver his speech, and well, I have heard it today maybe 40 times. So after Ursula von der Leyen, I was thinking that it was time for me to leave, and because there was just yet another head of state, then I waited for this gentleman. You might not be familiar with him, but that's the Prime Minister of the Czech Republic, so that's where I come from. So I wanted to listen to his speech. It was similar like the other speeches, except that he also mentioned the war in Ukraine and its implications. This would be our Prime Minister on the left-hand side, just discussing with the Minister of Environment how was his speech. And this would be, I think, the last image for today, showing that there is a hope. I voted for the guy on the left, so I had a hope in him, and he gave me hope that there is still a hope to get things done. So rather than spending there another 2 or 3 hours in the plenary listening to the same messages over and over, I went out. Because I was kind of tired from meeting all these or seeing all the presidents and prime ministers, and yet again I met the Czech prime minister again just walking by. So with this image I'm finishing my short overview of today. Spent most of the day in the plenary, and met more heads of states within 5 hours than during the last years together.
So during the week, and in our first show, we said we wanted to hear voices from indigenous peoples, from less advantaged peoples, and from youth. So Esteban Rodolifi, who's part of our team, has been moving around the conference, talking to young people, and getting their thoughts. So we have a little conversation with Esteban and a wonderful group of young people. I'd like just to hear that from Esteban. Thank you.
We're here today from Koi with a group of young climate activists from different university campuses in Taiwan, Singapore, and Japan. Would you like to present yourselves and tell us which country are you from and which campuses are you from?
Hi everyone, I'm from Taiwan. I represent Taiwan Youth Climate Coalition. I'm the deputy head of our COP27 delegation. My name is Ellen, and I'm from National Taipei University in Taiwan.
Don't worry.
Hello everyone, I'm Regina Zhang, and I also come from Taiwan Youth Climate Coalition as the head of COP27 delegation, and I just graduated from National Taiwan University.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Dorcas. I'm from Singapore representing Singapore Youth for Climate Action, and I'm a climate artist and storyteller, and I'm representing National University of Singapore.
Hi everyone, I'm Yuzu from Japan. I am a member of Climate Youth Japan, and now I'm in the 3rd grade of my bachelor, and I belong to Tokyo University of Foreign Studies.
Hi, my name is Haruki Yamamoto. I'm also a member of Climate Youth Japan. We call it CYZ. I'm a student at Waseda University in Japan.
Hi, nice to meet you. My name is Hiro. I'm also from Climate Youth Japan from Japan. Now I'm the 1st grade university student of University of Tokyo in Japan. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
So, can you tell us a little bit about the core mission of your organizations within your campuses? We'll start this way again.
Sure. So Taiwan Youth Climate Coalition has long been devoted to climate education and climate youth networking initiatives in universities in Taiwan. For example, we have a special initiative, like we train the club leaders from different universities regarding the sustainability and climate change school clubs. And I think I can pass on to our head.
Sure.
Thank you. So like for the youth networking, we also have some workshops like engage like university students to let them know what is going on our Taiwan's policy agenda. Like we are in 2020, we have an act talking focuses on Greenhouse Gas Management Act, and we are going on the amendment of that. So we train the students to let them know what is happening, and now the act is like in our legislation, like so. We hope that our Taiwan's government can like pass it and to have a more like comprehensive act to address climate change.
Fantastic. And from Singapore?
Yes, for Singapore Climate Action, we're a completely youth-led and volunteer-run organization, and we focus on capacity building workshops for Singaporean youth in order to engage with things like climate policies. So recently we held like 2 climate policy workshops in order to give fellow youths an overview of how the parliamentary process works and how they can engage further with politics and environmental issues in Singapore.
Brilliant. And from Japan?
Before Anthony, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Should we talk about the activities of CYJ or the activities of my university? Which one?
Oh, we'll get to your university eventually. But on
My
the next
university.
question, let's go first for the activities of your organization.
Your organization. Okay.
Should I?
You can.
So we CYJ are not like until now we are not collaborating with some schools or universities, unfortunately, but we do raise awareness of Japanese youth about climate change. And regarding that, we hosted an event, online event, which was called like youth COP preparatory conference, which was online, and the target was from elementary school students to university students.
Fantastic. Then the follow-up question is, within your campuses, have there been particular transitions in terms of lowering down emissions from your campus activities, or other transitions to make campus activities more sustainable that you have advocated for, or your campus by itself has started in the recent years?
Okay,
Sure.
so I come from National Taiwan University, and in our schools we have some like initiatives like we advocate for the fossil fuel divestment in our campus, and I think it just worked for last year or several years ago. And also our university also commit net zero goal. So I think it's last year's thing. So I think there are some students and student association they are promoting for that. So I think like our university is trying to like transforming to a more greener university in Taiwan.
Wow. Has there been any date associated with the net zero goal thus far?
Actually, I can't remember the year, but they did commit the goal for net zero.
Incredible.
Okay, so our university is National Taipei University, and from 2020, we have been launching the greenhouse gas inventory scheme in our university. And recently, we just got carbon neutrality certificate, I think, from Taiwanese government. And we also, our professors have been promoting an initiative that is to establish a carbon negative store in convenience stores.
Remarkable. Singapore.
Um, for the National University of Singapore, we have committed to net zero as well. In fact, I think positive, in fact.
Wow.
So I don't remember what the date is either 2025 or 2030. But
That's very ambitious in any case.
it was. I
It
remember
is an
that it was
ambitious
quite
goal.
ambitious.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's remarkable.
Yeah. I remember that it was quite ambitious. And in our school as well, we do a lot of research. So we do a lot of research on renewable energies, on electrification of cars. And for our school as well, we are trying to push for NUS to divest from fossil fuels. So recently there was a coalition of students from different universities that we call on all of our universities, not just NUS, and we released a report on the transitions that the school can take, or like the different policies they can implement in order to help to transition our school out of investing in fossil fuels. This is something that we're continuing to want to advocate for, and I hope that our school is also pushing in that direction as well.
Fantastic.
Okay, so from Japan, my university is Tokyo University of Foreign Studies, and yeah, my university is very positive about carbon neutrality. So the top decided to convert all energy use to 100% renewable ones by 2030.
That is also considered very ambitious.
Very ambitious, I guess. And also, my university joined some kind of university league of renewable energy, which was established in 2019 in Japan. And yeah, like collaborating with other universities, my universities are very working hard to achieving the goal. Yeah, and also we have a kind of student organization for exactly existing for the achievement of carbon neutrality at campus. So also I am a member of the club, and we made kind of saving energy sticker and put the sticker into every classrooms, and so that we can raise awareness of students. So yeah, I think we have a lot of chances to think about climate issues in campus, and also the staff, the professors are very positive about our movement.
Thank you for that. Well, are there any other actions or any other particular comments that you would like to make for the Campus Climate Core audience and the U.S. students at large? Dorcas, you're a climate artist.
Yes.
Would you like to tell us about your work?
Okay, okay.
It's difficult without the visual support, but
It's okay. So basically, what I try to do in climate art is to tell stories that kind of humanize the climate crisis. So I try not to make it just about facts and figures and numbers, because I feel like people might be quite distanced from things that are very quantifiable. Instead, I try to make things about feelings or about the real stories that I hear from conferences like this. So things that I do, I guess, are like infographics. So I like to break down social and environmental issues into posters or social media posts, and then I post it on my Instagram account. Another thing I like to do is to do community murals. So this is where I want to involve the entire neighborhood in painting a mural to do with environmental messages. So recently I completed a mural in June about human and nature coexistence. So we got the kids in the neighborhood to come down and to like help paint the different native, the local birds in Singapore, and to also educate them on what it means to live in harmony with nature. And it's really fun because while they're painting also and like like splashing paint on the floor as well, they get very excited about talking about environmental and social issues. Yeah, and some other things I do as well is that me and another Singaporean poet, we just released a collection of poetry on different eco emotions, so like eco anxiety or eco grief. And we want to use books like this in order to help start conversations around emotions that we might experience in the climate crisis. So this is just a summary of the work that I do, I guess, as an artist.
quite an amount of work on top of being a student. Well, thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for coming. Any other comments you would like to add?
I just want to add on her comments is we also believe that the power of words or visual arts, because in our organization we also has a project called climate fiction. So we are designing a future about what we are going to face when we did nothing for climate change when it comes to 2050. So maybe we had a postcards designed, and in the postcard we draw many famous tourist spots in Taiwan will be underwater if we did nothing for climate change. So I think that's the power of visual art, that maybe beside from the workshops or the delivery of knowledge, maybe we can have other ways to also educate the public about the issue of climate change.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for participating.
So thanks, Esteban. That was really interesting, and we'd love to keep checking in on young people all this week and see what their thoughts are, if they're frustrated, if they feel involved, if they feel engaged, if they feel disenfranchised. The whole civil society aspect of the conference so far seems to be absent. So we need that protest. We need those people. We need people to put pressure on the delegates and to put pressure on the press. And the young people are going to be all important in carrying that message to the conference and keeping the pedal to the metal and getting things done. So tomorrow we have 3 waterkeepers from Senegal and Chris Wilkie, who's the Global Advocacy Director for the Waterkeeper Alliance. This is going to be a really interesting discussion. We've been working with Mbake Sek, with Adel Wad, with Dauda Gay, and with Chris and other members of the team for months, trying to keep offshore oil and gas drilling from coming to Senegal. As you know, we cannot get to 1.5 if we keep drilling and putting more fossil fuel in the air. So this conversation and the actions that they're taking are really, really important. We're going to push like heck to try to get this program out, try to stop fossil fuel from coming to Senegal. So that's in tomorrow's show. So there we are. We're going to adjourn now. Thanks all for tuning in. We'll see you again tomorrow. And some of the polls are still open. So if you have the opportunity and you have not voted, please, I implore you, get out and vote. This is so important. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.